Hi, everybody, and welcome to the regular Working Group for Multi-Tenancy meeting. Today, we're going to go over the Multi-Tenancy Benchmark project with an update and a demo from that team. And then Yaqui is going to go over the latest update to the hierarchical namespace controller. So handing it over to Jim for Multi-Tenancy Benchmarks.
Thank you, Tasha. I am seeing a message saying that the host disabled participant screen sharing, so you may need to do some magic to enable that, or I could send you the link to the slides.
I'm just messing with permissions. I guess this is what happens when we make things more secure. You're a co-host.
Okay, thank you. Oh, it works now. Perfect. All right, let me pull up the slide deck, and then I'm going to hand off to Anuj to do a quick demo as well. So you might need to make him co-host as well. Okay, so just a quick update, on the multi-tenancy track. So for those of you who are familiar with some of the different initiatives in our working group, the multi-tenancy benchmarks is one of the 3 projects that we're currently pursuing. So the other one we'll hear from today is the HNC project. There's also the virtual cluster project that Faye has been leading. So the goal of the benchmarks project is to establish a set of guidelines and standards on how to configure multi-tenancy within clusters. And the focus here is to stay implementation agnostic, so not take any particular stance on what the implementation is, but focus more on measuring whether multi-tenancy has been achieved. And as part of that, what we've done is define 3 different profile levels, 7 categories, and about 20 or so, and this list is growing, automated tests that we want to perform to measure multi-tenancy. And all of this is on the Git repo. I have a link in these slides, and I have also linked the slides to the agenda document, so you can reference it from there. So one thing which I'm very happy to announce with the help from Tasha and everybody in the group, we have some new folks joining us who will be participating, and there are 2 students participating through different programs over the course of the summer. They're both here, so I'd love for them to introduce themselves quickly to the team. So maybe starting with you, Anuj, and then Divya, if you could introduce yourselves.
Uh, can anyone listen me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I'm the final year graduate from the NIT Kurukshetra, and I'm been contributing to the Kubernetes till last year. So I tried for the GSOC last year, but unfortunately I didn't get selected. So this time, thanks to the Jim sir and the other mentors, I got selected. So my mainly my I'm interested in cloud native things. So yeah, I'm very hype about the contributing in the multi-tenancy benchmarks.
Divya, are you on as
Yeah.
well?
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm Divya. I'm a 4th year undergraduate and I'm an open source enthusiast. I'll be working as a community bridge intern here. And previously, I participated in GSOC and Outreach as well.
Thank you. Yeah, so welcome Divya and Anuj, and great to have you for the summer, and we'll talk a little bit about what we'll be working on. So before we go into more details, just a quick recap on where we were with this project and what we've previously done. So we had automated some of the level 1 tests defined in the repo. The way we had done this automation is using the E2E test framework. And underneath the covers that uses kubectl, Ginkgo for behavioral tests. And some of the challenges we saw with that was, in how we would organize and grow the test code, how we could also, test the tests themselves. So we wanted to make sure the unit tests were tested, and this, was something we were trying to figure out. And then the main problem we started seeing is the user experience this led to, which was, it's fairly usable in terms of the output, etc., but it didn't provide all the controls that we were looking for from a tool to measure multi-tenancy. So the new approach we started prototyping just a few weeks ago with some inputs from others as well is we started looking at just using client code directly instead of the E2E test framework. We also, researched how the multi-tenancy benchmarks test could work as a kubectl plugin. And we wanted to, to do this, we would create a small set of types, basically to organize tests and keep, keep this modular and flexible. And what we were looking for, the benefits we were looking for is, of course, controlling the user experience, and you'll see that in a quick demo. Of course, and the drawback on the flip side is there's a little bit more coding involved and more stuff to maintain. But overall, we're feeling this is well worth it and would love to get feedback and thoughts on what Anuj will demo. So what we're going to go through, and I'm going to hand off to Anuj after this, is we're going to run multi-tenancy benchmarks on a new cluster and namespace. And what we'll do is we'll also run this with the tenant controller. So this is the tenant CRD, which is a part of the overall virtual cluster project, but also can be used standalone. And then we'll also run multi-tenancy benchmarks with pod security policies enabled to show what the outputs look like there. So those are the three main components of the demo, and then we'll, we can sort of get, I guess, answer any questions or think about next steps. All right, so let me stop sharing, and Anuj, if you want to share.
Okay, just wait a minute. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, so from here, I just created a kind Kubernetes cluster with the configuration that enables the port security policies in the kind cluster. So I just recorded whole demos, so there will be no chance of failure. First, I applied the privileged port security policy so that the ports can be created, otherwise they will get blocked. So here we can see the ports are created after the privilege policy. Skipping this part. So I wrote a script to install the tenant controller, and with the help of the tenant controller, I created the tenants and the tenant namespaces. Actually, let me show you. Let me show you the script and where I get this thing from automation from. Can you see my VS Code screen?
Yep.
So here are the links that are shared in the multi-tenancy repo. I just automated whole steps given in the readme of the tenant controller. If we move to that, yeah. Uh, from here, I'm just automating all these commands in my script, and so I just loop around this script, this command for 2 times to create 2 tenants. Back to the demo. Mm, okay, we'll see. Yeah, here we are creating the 2 tenants. Okay, so if we get the tenants, it will show the 2 tenants. Yeah, tenant 0 CR and tenant 1 CR, and for the corresponding tenants, we have 2 tenant namespace, tenant 0 admin and the tenant 1 admin. So this was the PSP used to generate the ports in the cube system. We will apply. So now what we will do, we will make 1 tenant valid to clear all the benchmarks and one to see the failure. So I created I created two PSPs in which I specified according to the benchmark what to be wrong and what to be false. I can show you the PSP later. So here, this was the PSP. Like in this, I just put the privilege false, and this is a valid tenant PSP. Like privilege to the false and other all things that can breach the security to the false. And I apply it to the tenant 0 CR. And this is the invalid tenant PSP. Okay, in which I set the privilege to true. If you can see where it is. Okay, I will show it. Okay, I applied both the PSP and the roles to the corresponding tenant namespace, sorry. So if we see the port security policies, we now have total 3 port security policies. One is privileged, and the two other policies that restricts the port sec, capacity. So we will now delete the PSP privileged, because it according it will. So here is the our command line tool kube control MTB. It has now two commands, list and the test. The list all the benchmarks. At present we have now three, all of the profile level 1, and the test, just run the test with the appropriate flags. It takes two flags. One is the tenant namespace and the another is the tenant admin service account name. At present, we are just assuming that it would be the tenant service account name. We will further change that to user or any other user input. Okay, so if we run the benchmark to the valid tenant, it will pass all the benchmarks. Okay, you can see it passed all the benchmarks, and it will show you the output like this. Now we can use this output to show the user to check their report in either dashboard or in any other YAML file or any other UI like HTML page or something like that. If we run the benchmarks on a invalid tenant, it will fail the test. Yeah, so it cleared one test. Okay, that is a very minute test, so it cleared that, but it failed other tests. Now you can see the error, what was the error, and it also shows the remediation. To correct this, to make this tenant a valid tenant, what we can do to make to this. That's all. Any questions?
Yeah, so just to kind of add a few points to that. Thank you, Anuj. Great demo. And I think what we wanted to do there was just show quickly the user experience. Of course, this only contains a few tests, but we think this would be a much easier way for folks to try out and use the tool. So we can distribute this as a kubectl plugin. They can download it, and really all you need is a namespace you want to run this on for the profile level 1 tests. The level 2, level 3 get a little bit trickier because those require creation of new namespaces as well for some of the tests. So we're still trying to figure out the best way to do that. So far, and we're definitely looking for more inputs, comments to see what we can do better here. If there's other improvements we can, explore for the user experience, but so let us know. And um, a few of us have been meeting weekly in addition to, of course, these working group meetings. So if you want to join those meetings, please reach out and let me know, or if you have any other thoughts or feedback on this.
One question though. This test, or is there plans of being able to provide custom tests to this, or did you show how you create one of these tests, or no? I didn't see that.
No, so here we haven't shown the details of the test case itself, but these would be written in Go code. The plan is to collect a set of benchmarks that we would want to run. So these would not be user customizable, but based on our Git repo, we have a set of checks which describe what each one of those checks do. So much like, with, of course, with the CIS benchmarks for Kubernetes, they have about a few, like 120 or so checks across different categories. That's how we model these checks as well across different categories and to test different levels of multi-tenancy within a cluster. Did that answer the question?
I get it. I'm just wondering. So if one needed to add something to the benchmarking, because let's say our networking requirements for multi-tenancy might be a lot more sophisticated than others, right? We do things that I would say 99% of the population will never need to do. But we wanted to validate an environment, and you wanted to have something like this as a tool to do that validation, as opposed to needing to do this plus something else. So is there a thought of, I guess, is the idea you're going to have a collection of tests that are generic and then some add-ons, perhaps? Or...
Exactly, right. So we will, and let me quickly share what we have on the Git repo. So this is just on the Kubernetes 6 multi-tenancy. If you go there into the benchmarks folder, so this is where we have all the generic tests defined that we are addressing. So definitely if there's any thoughts, inputs, if there's different levels, feel free to look at those and comment, or even submit a PR for other definitions. But this is the starting set that we were looking at initially to automate tests for. It is an interesting idea if there's a way to sort of customize this without having to write code. If you have some ideas on that, yeah, I would love to explore more.
Well, even if we have to write Go modules, that's okay, as long as it's something that's easy to plug into this, right? As opposed to having to go through a whole process of reviews upstream with this community. If we're doing something that's so custom, you guys will never be able to approve it because it's not generic enough, right?
True.
I see things missing here, like things like I don't know. In our case for multi-tenancy, there's things like the image pull policy should always be,
always
and things like
correct.
that.
Right. Yeah. So there are a few other comments which we will be updating these the level 1 tests with, and level 2 will sort of go into more details for in terms of being able to even allow self-service and creation of namespaces. And then level 3, so this is something we will test with like HNC, as well as with other projects like OPA, Gatekeeper, and Kyverno. And then level 3 is where we're planning on testing with the virtual clusters project. So yeah, feel free to browse the repos and add comments, and we will be starting to once now that we have the basis of the tool and define some of the initial infrastructure, we'll be making progress to.
So one question though, you're not basing this on isn't the tenant namespace controller, I hope, or is that completely is the expectation is that a tenant has namespaces, but how I build those namespaces, I don't care, right? I
That's
think I heard you say
exactly
that.
right. That's exactly right. So we're not
There's no,
imposing any one particular way of building namespaces, but and we're assuming there will be multiple ways. For example, like tools like Kubeflow have their own sort of multi-tenancy built in, right?
yeah.
So we want to allow for that as well.
Okay. As long as it's here some Kubernetes native artifacts and configure in a certain way, you don't care. That
Right.
sounds good. Thank you.
Sure. You're welcome. All right. So just to keep on time, Tasha, I think we will stop here. But if there's any other comments, questions, please reach out on our Slack channel.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Cool. Okay, so Yikui, are you ready to go for hierarchical namespace controller?
Yes, sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is, hi everyone, my name is Ichigo. I work with Adrian on HNC, and I'll give an update on HNC v0.4. So in this version, we added, we renamed the self-service namespace to sub namespace, and also the custom resource from hierarchical namespace to sub namespace anchor. The reason is that all namespaces in HNC are actually hierarchical already, and also this resource is added to a parent namespace for HNC to create sub namespaces. So sub namespace anchor makes more sense. And we, in this version also, we no longer require users to install Cert Manager as a prerequisite to install HNC. We also added namespace conditions to metrics, so users can see how many namespaces are having conditions, and also whether the conditions are critical. We also did some bug fix on handling conditions. For example, we will still update tree labels even when the namespace has critical conditions. And for namespace cycles, so the cycles means the cycle in the namespace hierarchy. Previously, we only add an invalid parent condition on one random namespace in the cycle. And now we have a cycle condition to be placed on all namespaces in the cycle, and also the condition will have information of all the namespaces that's in the circle. That's in the cycle. That's pretty much it. Does anyone have any questions?
Cool. Well, thank you very much for going over that with us.
Yeah, sure.
And so everyone on the call knows the code for both of these projects is up on GitHub under the multi-tenancy working group under Kubernetes-SIGs. And the links are posted in all of our docs. So if you join our mailing list, you'll get a link to our docs, and then you can easily find the GitHub page from there if you don't already have the link. And obviously we're all in the Kubernetes Slack, and we're all happy to answer questions about these projects there as well. Cool. Well, thank you very much for those great presentations, and chat with everybody later.